Other ways I get to know myself. I run every day. I'm not saying you need to run every day. I don't meditate. I run. Running for me is meditation. And honestly, I do it as much for my brain as for my body. If I don't run, and the truth is the mindfulness stuff came to the fore for me because I had a running injury. I got Piriformis Syndrome. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. I never knew what it was either. You don't really want to know what it is, and I hope you never get it. But when somebody runs regularly, there's always some little tweaky injury that you deal with, but you just keep going. Anyway, Piriformis is this muscle in your butt, and when it gets tight, it's not good. And mine got tight, but you just stretch, you do this. I went to the massage, it didn't help. I went even for acupuncture, it didn't help. It kept getting worse. I kept running. And this is what happens, you're stubborn when you're a runner. And then one day I got out of the shower and I couldn't walk. I had to crawl to the bedroom. And one of the things I'm going to touch on is asking for help. There was a guy who had come to a Zing Train seminar. Zing Train is our training business, and I taught that seminar. And during the intros, he said, we want to be the Zingermans of physical therapy. We want great service, great quality. This is how we want to run our physical therapy business. We're just getting going, and we're here to learn how y'all do it. So I called Maggie from Zing Train. I'm like, give me that guy's number, man. I need help. And he called and said, come in first thing tomorrow morning. Don't worry about the insurance. Just get in here. And he started working on me. That was in November. I remember it because it was getting cold. And it took him 6 weeks to fix it. So I couldn't run. So when you're used to running daily, you would think logically that I would have had more time because it was like an hour to 2 hours out of my day, 45 minutes out of my day that was disappeared so I could get more done. But the truth is I was getting less done. And then here it's warm today, but I'm walking around like this in Michigan when it's 15 degrees really, and I was cold all the time. And I couldn't get grounded and I couldn't get centered, and it was really threw me off. And that's what made me become aware of mindfulness, was losing something that had helped me stay grounded, right? So the running for me is very helpful. Who's the extroverts in the room? Only a few of you. Okay, so one way to get in touch with yourself is solitude. For the introverts, this is a normal state of existence. For the extroverts, it's very difficult. So Paul's a total like for me, I prefer to be alone, no offense, but it's awkward for me to be near you. But it's true. I've just learned how to act. The introverts know what I'm talking about. You could pass in the world, but really, no offense, I don't really want to see you. But it's okay. It's nothing personal. But for the extroverts, it's painful to be alone. But if you're never alone with your own thoughts, it's not that helpful. Jean-Paul Sartre, the famous French existentialist philosopher, said, if you're unhappy when you're alone, you're in bad company. And I really like that. If you're not at peace with your own presence, it's a difficult life. And I'm going to tell you, the violence in the world, no offense, it's not coming from the other person. This is coming from when we're violent in here and unhappy in here, the problems manifest in all our relationships. And whether that's countries or your neighbor or your significant other or your child, that's where it's coming. And the Dalai Lama said if we want peace, it's got to start here, and he's right. I agree. Okay, another way to get to know yourself is something I'm going to have you do real quick, which is another little exercise. It's called This I Believe. So on the bottom of page 8 in your workbook, in the blank space, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I want you to start with This I Believe, like the NPR show, and I want you to just list things that you believe about yourself. There's no right or wrong answers. Just list as many as you can come up with. What do you believe about yourself? Got some? So knowing what you believe, I've been talking about it, I talked about it this morning, but knowing what you believe, whether it's about yourself, whether it's about the world, whether it's about other people, will help you to manage your life. And I'm going to redraw what I did this morning for those of you who are here, because some of you weren't here, and I think it's quite interesting, and it was very eye-opening for me. It's a cycle that starts with beliefs. And I learned it from a guy named Bob Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T, from his book Transformed. And I know he told me he didn't make it up, but he can't remember where he learned it. So it exists somewhere in the universe. But it goes like this. If you have a belief about yourself, that belief will lead you to take some action. So if you believe about yourself that you're not very smart, then you don't learn things well. Or you believe you're not creative. That's a common one. I'm not a creative type. It will lead you to take some action. If you believe you're not very smart, what kind of actions might you take when people offer up new projects in the company? You run, you hide, you don't have time, you're buried, you're busy. That action will lead others in your company, in your organization, to believe something about you. If you never offer up volunteering to take on projects, which you actually did because you believed you weren't very smart, but what are they likely to believe? You're lazy, you're not interested. And then what are they likely to do when they have a really big project that requires a lot of creative, interesting thought? What are they going to do? They're not going to offer it to you. And you go, see, I knew they left me out because I'm not creative. This cycle is universal. When I read it, it was like a big light bulb went off for me, because mostly I had been focusing on this part, and what he taught me was don't focus on this. Once in a while this is the issue, but mostly the issue is starting here. This morning, because it's true for other beliefs, this morning I was just getting going, and he goes, well, how do you take this information back when you have employees that aren't really that interested in it, and they're just they might hang with it for a week and then they're going to forget all about it? Okay, let's start by looking at your beliefs. Beliefs are not values. Beliefs are what we learned from being around our parents, our ministers, our teachers, our siblings, our friends, the news. They lead us to form beliefs. The beliefs that we have may not be aligned with where we want to go. So in the case of management, if where your values and your vision are having engaged, caring, interested employees, but your belief is that they're not going to pay attention, hello, it's like driving with your car out of alignment. What's going to happen? It's always pulling off course, and then you're frustrated. You can do it, but it's exhausting after a while, because you can't just let go of the steering wheel and cruise. You got to hold tight all the time. And as soon as you let your guard down, it's going to crash. And that's what's true in life. So becoming aware of what our beliefs are around ourselves, in this case, but also people. We had a guy come from New York to a seminar a couple weeks ago, quite successful restaurant guy, but they're stressed, man. And in the seminar, he's like, you just can't trust people. I just don't trust them. Now, I would suggest that's his choice. It says more about his own trust in himself than it does about the other people. But if your belief is people are untrustworthy, what are you likely to do? And how might you show that? You don't give them responsibility. What else? You work yourself to death. What are they likely to believe about you and their job when that happens? He doesn't trust us, and or we can't do it. We're not good enough. What kind of actions are they likely to take? They all keep waiting. I'm not getting in there, man. And then you go, see, I knew they were no good. Look it. They had their one chance and they didn't step up. Dude, you got 4 years of not letting them step up, basically sending them an implicit message that they're not good enough. One day you weren't there, they didn't step up, and now you're mad at them. I don't think so. Is this making sense? Okay, so starting to become more mindful of your beliefs will be very helpful. Okay, speaking of mindful, I'd like you to go back to those 3 good things. from earlier today. And then next to each of the 3 good things, I want you to write down what you liked about it and what you can do to make more of it happen in the future.
I just had a new baby.
Well, at least you know how that works.
Well, I don't know how many kids you want to have. If it's not aligned with your vision, we're going to leave that alone, no. So why did you like it? What can you do to make more of it happen? And when you got that, I want you to go find another person that you haven't talked to. You can withhold whatever details are not appropriate, but then you can share what you came up with. So I want you to try to meet another person, share what you learned. Okay, can you come back? You need another minute? How did that go? Who learned something? What did you learn?
Some things you can't necessarily have a direct effect on doing again.
Okay.
Put yourself in the right mindset.
Yeah, so one way to make good things happen is being open to good things happening. Like dollar bills. No, I'm not joking. There's good things happening all around us. It's just frequently we're not noticing them. We only notice the bad.
Well, that, like, what I thought about when you told the story is, like, how many people are, like, looking at the ground. Like, a lot of people, like, look at their phones these days.
Yep.
Like, nobody's paying attention to what's going on.
Yep.
And you were, like, just kind of scanning around, taking in the environment.
Yeah, because I'm always looking. Now, part of that came because I have years in the restaurant business, and we are always, if you're good in the dining room, you're looking at everything. No, so I mean, I have professional practice at it, but my point is, it's all around us in all elements of our life. Okay? The little exercise that you just did basically is making you mindfully aware, making you consciously competent about how to make good things happen in your life. Okay? I learned it from Martin Seligman, who's the guy who basically started the field of positive psychology. His most recent book is called Flourish. That's another good one, Wayne, if you haven't read it. When I read this little thing, he calls it 3 good things or 3 blessings. When I read it, I was like, oh, this is what I was doing in my journaling when I was starting to go down the tubes and I'd start to get my mind back on the positive. He says, and it's demonstrated statistically to be true, if you do this exercise daily in the morning, or whenever, if you do this exercise daily for a period of 3 to 4 months, you will become so dependent in a good way on doing this exercise, you'll never stop. And there's enormous data. The people who are focusing on the positive things are less stressed. Their health is statistically, their health is better. Statistically, they have less disease. Statistically, their lives are more fulfilling. Their sense of well-being is greater. How long did it take you to do that? 3 minutes? I know a number of people who I've taught this to, and now they started doing it with their kids at home. When they sit down for dinner, they go around a table and everybody says one good thing that happened to them. Instead of, how was your day? Fine. How was school? Boring. What'd you learn? Nothing.
We're bringing that into a company meeting.
Absolutely.
The whole thing's sort of positive.
Right. So when you start positive, instead of negative, what's the odds of finding more positive? Yeah. And here's the other thing. It's statistically shown, when we're in a positive frame of mind, our creative skills go up. Just saying. So, in a stressful emergency, we're not looking for that much creativity. It's like there's a fire, we're going to leave now. We don't need to be sensitive to alternate versions of forest fire prevention in Burma in the 19th century. What we need to do is get out of the building. But when we're dealing with a problem at work, there's a training issue, or we're short sales and we need to open a new market, that's the time we want people thinking out of the box. When they're feeling negative stress, it's not helpful.
Well, I was going to say, in my house, whenever you have something to say, the rule is, if you have something to say, if it's critical or if it's negative, that you have to wait and say something positive first, and then you can come back with your
I love that.
But you have to come up with something positive before you point out.
We should try that at work. Thank you.
Okay, in my line of business, the same thing. We never give what we call plus delta. Before we give a delta, we always give a plus. Hey, I love how I watched you interact with this client. You offered this and this. What I'd like to see you do differently in the future.
Yeah.
So you're not bringing in negative, but you say, what I'd like to see you, and just add on to that.
Yeah. What's your name again?
Kathy.
Kathy. What Kathy just did also, by the way, is an excellent communication tool. She used an I statement instead of a you statement. So she didn't say, you need to do this better because you're falling short. She said, what I would like to see done differently next time. So we take the burden on us. It's not really about managing ourselves per se, but it was so beautifully done. I just want to point that out. Those were both excellent. I might use those. Thank you. As you become more focused on positive things, if you turn to the next page, page 9, you will be, I believe, more effectively able to deal with your emotions. Are emotions good or bad? They just are. They're kind of like the weather. They're coming whether you want them or not. Who has emotions? Look at, guys, you have them. Just get it over with. Sorry. Took me a while to realize it too, but you got them. If you really didn't know, all you have to do is watch a bunch of guys watching a football game, and then you will see every emotion possible, from tears to hugging, affection, love, passion, and deep emotional expression, and then when the game's over, an hour later, it's all gone. It's kind of, I'm making fun of myself. Anyway, that's when I stopped watching football games. One time years ago, I threw the remote control at the TV, and I was like, I mean, I'm not an anger person. I was like, this is nuts, because this thing makes zero difference to anything. And I'm like so upset that I'm throwing the thing at the TV. I'm like, I'm done. So here's the thing. We all have emotions. The key of this statement, point 2, honor your emotions. They're coming. Whether you like them to come or not, they're coming. The key is not that they don't. If you pretend you don't have them, it's called denial. That's not helpful either. I came to look at it, it's sort of like a soda bottle. If you shake it up, and then later you pop the lid, what's going to happen? All over you and everybody else. That's what happens if we are in denial. You can bury it for a while, but next year or in 5 years or in 10 years, it's going to come out. And I'm not really focused on you got to go back and do all your childhood psychology. You can if you want, but my point is just it's screwing up your life if you don't. One of the best ways to know, by the way, that's going on is when your reaction is way bigger than the situation calls for. So throwing a remote at a TV, making fun of myself in hindsight, some of you are going, I threw the remote at the TV too. Throwing a remote at a TV over a game, which, no offense, I mean, it really doesn't change anything unless you happen to be the player or own the franchise. And I'm not down on sports, I'm just saying, being like when we react in a meeting and we wig out, when I get super upset about a display, there's something else going on that's not about what I'm reacting to, okay? So hiding the emotions is not helpful. On the other hand, completely sinking into the emotions is not helpful either. So here's another personal example. So I love to travel, but I hate leaving home. And I realize that every time I get on the plane to go, I get sad. But what I learned is once I actually get there, then I'm happy. So in the old days when I wasn't as good at this, I would have like, oh my God, why am I sad? Maybe I shouldn't go. It might be a bad omen and it's a bad trip. Maybe I shouldn't be traveling. Maybe there's something wrong with the job. I don't know. This is really bad. What if we did this wrong? This good room, she's going, he's really good at ruminating. I'm very good. I was very good at ruminating. That was just like a little humorous version, but you can only imagine the real version was scary, like a bad movie. Okay, so, but then I just learned, if I just go, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with the sadness. It's how I am. And I'm sure if you do deep therapy, you can come back to my childhood and all that, but that's not really my point. I mean, that's helpful work. I believe going back to the roots and understanding where it came from is helpful. But in the moment, my point is you don't need to act on the emotion. There's nothing wrong with you for having the emotion. The more you're mindful, the more self-aware you are, the more you can see the emotions coming. Ram Dass, who was a famous guy who I used to think must have been some famous Indian guru mystic, but turned out to be a Jewish psychologist from New York. But I heard him speak about 15 years ago, 18 years ago when I was doing some of this work, and he was probably in his 60s then. And he said, look, I got the exact same problems I had when I was 20. But when I was 20, they were like these overwhelming tidal waves ruining my life, and now they're like these little flies that buzz by my head, and I just sort of gently react and move them away. The emotions that come are roughly going to be the same for the rest of your life. It's really just how we manage them. So, anybody heard of Viktor Frankl? So Viktor Frankl was a neurologist and psychiatrist, born in Austria, was put into concentration camps at the age of 37 in World War II. He actually taught classes on positive living while in the concentration camps. He wrote many things, but his most famous work is Man's Search for Meaning. In Man's Search for Meaning, there's a quote that changed my perspective on life. He said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. Choose. In our response lies our growth and freedom. I'm going to read it to you again. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. Stimulus, response. In the middle is where it's at. Okay? So if you were doing a little visual, what I would suggest is people who are not mindful and are not good at self-management, the stimulus comes and the action is like immediate. He insulted me. I'm not going to take that. Question? Oh, you have that problem? Oh, well, at least you're laughing about it. Okay, so the more mindful you become, in my opinion, and the more you process what I just said to you reading his quote, the more we are living in this space. In my opinion, mindfulness is basically inhabiting this space. Because we realize that although the clock is ticking just as fast, we actually make this space seem a lot bigger. This is why in sports the great players say they can see the field unfolding before it's even happened. Because you learn, I want to yell at them, but yelling at them is not going to get done what I want to happen. So it starts to seem like it's all in slow motion because you can feel the yell coming out. And then you remember me telling you this. I'm not joking. And then you don't do it. And over time, it takes practice to change a lifetime of habits that are not working. Right? So I came from a very loving family, which everyone talked over each other. They're not bad people. They just showed love and affection by disagreeing with you and not letting you finish your sentence. It doesn't bother me. So I have no problem. Does anybody else come from that family? Okay. So I have no problem having those kinds of conversations. The problem is most of the world didn't come from that kind of family, and they consider interruption rude. I don't understand that at all. In my family, if they didn't argue with you, it was because they were not paying attention. But in most families, if they're quiet while you talk, it's a sign of respect. So I needed to learn that in meetings, me interrupting people vehemently in the middle of their sentence was not helpful. Just saying. Maybe down here it works better. I don't know. So good self-management. Paul's actually a very good listener. And so I would just like, if it was a difficult meeting and I was prepared from doing the journaling, I would say, okay, dude, I'm sitting next to you. Kick me if I start going. Because it helped me not to do it, and I get better response. Is this making sense?
Ari, can you read the last line of that quote again?
Yeah, I can email it to you too, or if you really go wild, you could buy the book. But I can email it to you, or just look it up. It's online. I mean, there's quotes from him. The whole thing is between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. See, we don't have to respond. We just feel like we have to respond, but you don't. And the more mindful you become, the more you basically looking through the options going, which one do I want? I can yell and feel better for a minute and then spend a month fixing it. Or I could go for a walk. So like I learned, it's better in a difficult meeting when I'm starting to lose it, it's better for me to go use the bathroom than it is to stay in the meeting and lose it. And no one ever criticizes you for going to the bathroom. Remember, like, you already went a minute ago. Like, so you can't go, oh, I got to go text my whatever. They get mad at you because you're not paying attention. So finding creative ways. Self-management for me is like, I never schedule 2 difficult meetings in a row unless I absolutely can't avoid it. Because I know if I'm already at the end of my bandwidth from the first one, and I'll lose it in the second one, and I'll pay the price later. Is this making sense? It's all just self-awareness. Let's look at point 3. Who here is really hard on themselves? So I had a funny thing happen over the years at work. In the early years, everybody would go talk to Paul when they were having problems or a bad day. They would talk to him, which made me feel bad, and then I was mad at him. Well, that didn't work. Well, I did feel bad. But being frustrated with them wasn't the issue. So using that when furious, get curious, I reflected. And I started to realize that part of why people would go talk to Paul is because for whatever his other issues, he was very at peace with himself. I, on the other hand, was like a lot of you, and I had a very self-critical inner dialogue going on. And although the words that I was saying to people when they were talking to me were not necessarily critical, somehow they always thought I was angry at them. Anybody else had that experience? People take away, like you think back and you're like, I didn't say that. See, they're picking up your internal dialogue. And here's what I learned. One day I was thinking about this, and I realized that if I spoke to the people in our organization the way I was talking to myself, they would have quit. That cannot be good. See, if you're a high achiever, it's not uncommon, especially if you come from that family where they talk over you all the time, it's not uncommon to have that internalized voice of like, come on, I can't believe you got a B. But there's nicer ways to say that. Plus delta?
Yeah.
I see, I'm learning. So there's nicer ways to talk to yourself. See, we think if we're from a high achieving setting that we need to be really hard on ourselves or else we're just going to completely fail. It's like, what would you say to a good employee who made a mistake? What would you say to him? And what might you say to him? It's okay, we can fix it. Would you say, I can't believe you did that? If you would, don't raise your hand. Would you say, what's wrong with you? You're a loser. You would never say that. So what I'm saying is take the same respect that you have appropriately brought to your workplace and do it on yourself. It's not easy if you have a lifetime of doing it the other way. But the journaling helped me a lot also because I was mindful of not doing it, and then I'd start slipping into doing it and I could correct course. There's ways to say, you know, it's not great that that happened, but you did the best you could. What can you do different next time to do it better? It's no different than what you would say to one of your best employees who, you know, made a mistake. They dropped something and it broke or whatever. If they go into total remorse, it just ruins their day. They didn't drop it on purpose, and unless they were being sloppy and completely careless, it just, stuff happens. I've dropped stuff. Okay, so being mindful of your inner dialogue makes an enormous difference. Here's one other thing about your inner dialogue I want to point out. And this isn't always inner dialogue, sometimes this is external, overt dialogue. Who uses this phrase? Sorry about my bad handwriting. Can you read that? Who says that? Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, here you're gonna learn something right now. You're gonna learn something. When you say that you have to do something, where's the power? You've given it away. Here's another frequently used phrase. Where's the power, guys? How about this one? Now, there's a few things, like I am not able to figure out how to be president in Ann Arbor and here at the same time. That's true, but I'm not talking about that. When you say, I can't stay late tonight, that's not accurate. And I'm not saying you should stay late. I'm just saying it's a choice. When you say, I have to go to work now, is that accurate? No. Who here remembers their parents saying you have to do something? How did you feel when they told you you had to do something?
Oh, man.
Okay, that's mellow. How did y'all feel when your parents told you you had to do something? Okay, rebellious, you're angry. Okay, I'm not joking. Think about it. You are taking that energy and bringing it with you everywhere you go. Because you don't have to do anything. Every day on my way to work, I drive by one of the soup kitchens. And I see good people with nowhere to live. And I'm not saying because of their own failure that they're there. I'm just saying I could choose. I'm not cutting on them in the least. I'm saying I could choose not to go to work. I could choose not to live how I live. There's lots of people living and they're doing okay in all walks of life. I'm choosing to go to work. It is a totally different experience. I choose to deal with difficult customers. I don't have to handle complaints well. It's a choice. There's businesses all over the world dealing with customer complaints very badly. It's true. We just had a few. It's very different when you choose. What could you say instead of I have to? Okay? What else could you, I agree, what else could you say? Yeah, I'm going to. I'm going to tell you. If you start trying to say I'm going to instead of I have to, you'll mess it up so many times because you have a lifetime of saying this stuff. And now think about how many employees you got, and all day, every day, they go, I have to go to work now. How's their energy? See, life it's a free life, man. We make a big deal in a good way about being in a free country, but I'm telling you, everybody all day is acting like they have no choice, especially at work. And the reason they can't wait to leave work is because they think then after work they have choice, except a lot of them go stuff like, well, I have to go now, my wife will kill me. I'm like, okay, A, I doubt she's going to kill you. B, you don't have to. Now, you may choose to go because you want to honor your wife or because the pain of her being upset is greater than the pain of not, and that's fine. No, that's fine, but it's a choice. So back to my introversion. It's not uncommon that introverts end up with extroverts. Not always, but it's very, very common in life. So for, years, living with an extrovert, and then she'd always want to go to parties, and I hate parties. I'd rather wash dishes. Frequently at parties, I end up in the kitchen helping the catering people wash the dishes because it's more rewarding and relaxing, okay? But extroverts love parties. They think it's fun. I'm like, I'd rather work. Now, the beauty of the food business, by the way, it's no accident that I'm in it, is we're open every day, all the time. And when most people have parties, that's when we're the busiest, so there's always a good excuse. But, I would feel compelled to go to the party, and so I would go to the party. You can imagine how good my energy was while I was there and how much fun I had. It was just fabulous. And then when I started realizing this, I realized I didn't have to go. And I could say totally respectful stuff like, you know what, I think it's cool that you want to go, but I'm not going to go tonight. I'm going to stay home and read for a while. That's totally not bothering me that you're going. I just, you know what, it's not for me tonight. I want to tell you, then when I did go, it was because I chose to go. And guess what? It was far less stressful. Okay, and I'm telling you, this is going on in your workplace all day long. If you want to have fun at your next meeting, just have a little pad in front of you, and every time somebody says one of these, just tick it off and start keeping track. About halfway through the meeting, you'll start laughing. They'll go, what's wrong? And you go, nothing. If you didn't get the idea, I'm very determined and stubborn. It took me 3 years to stop saying this stuff. I don't mean I never say it casually, but when I say it, I don't mean it that way. 3 years, and I'm about as stubborn as it gets. You have a lifetime of saying this, and I'm telling you, it's changing your energy. And the journaling, again, helped me to become aware of this, okay? You with me? Okay, I want to move through the next ones a little more quickly, but living our values. This is not rocket science. The more you're living your values, the better your energy is going to be. People talk about burnout regularly. I would argue that burnout is rarely from working too much. It's mostly from working in places that are not aligned with your own values. Because in essence, you must not be yourself in order to succeed at work, and it's exhausting. So part of why people like Wayne and I like going to work is because we started the business, but what's implicit in that no one's realizing is it's not just that we started the business, it's that we made a place where the values are aligned with our own values, so we don't have to be different people at work than we are when we leave work. But if you're working in a setting, whether it's a nonprofit, whatever, and it's out of alignment with your own values, it's exhausting. It's exhausting because all day long you're making values decisions to degrade your own self-worth, and that's not good. Okay, so I just want to put that out there. And I don't mean you can change everything overnight, but the more we live in integrity with our values, we act in integrity with our values, and I don't mean don't get diversity of views. Diversity is excellent, but working with people who don't share your values is extremely difficult. They can have totally different perspectives, totally different backgrounds, they can have different beliefs even, but different values means that every time we make a decision they like, we feel worse. That's not good. That's not good, okay?